Today, we're looking at Birmingham Pen Company's Waterford Dusk. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, if you like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. Also, if you're interested, you can follow me over on Instagram. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then inked up the Sailor My First pen with a medium fine nib. I wrote with it for a day, and then I took my notes for this video. For the first writing sample, I used Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. There are additional writing samples later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to make sure I keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It's not a bad purple here. It's actually a very nice purple with the 1.1 stub. I find a lot I don't really care for this one. The extra fine is about the same tone, slightly darker, just a hair darker than the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. The medium is significantly darker than the extra fine with no feather, spread, halo sheen, or shade, 18 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it and we didn't get it. Tomoe River, no bleeding, very minor ghosting. You could probably use both sides with this ink, with the extra fine, maybe not so much the medium. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade. It's a beautiful tone here with the cream paper and a dry stub. Beautiful. The extra fine is slightly darker with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 15 seconds to dry. The medium is significantly darker than the extra fine. It has no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 27 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows us we should get color variation, although we don't. The scrubby of the medium shows us none. We got none. Rhodia, no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is about the same tone as the 1.1 with no feather spread, halo sheen, or shade, 12 seconds to dry. The medium, a much darker tone with no feather, spread, halo sheen, and no shade, 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We got no color variation. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And what we see is pretty interesting. We see a green working its way up, a really nice green. Then we start to see a little bit of blues here. There's some blues and then this very magenta tone all the way at the top. Now the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. A lot of that green stayed behind and a lot of the blue, but not all of the blue. The green pushed up, but not nearly as far. We see hints of the blue left on the far right and the far left of the filter paper. We just see hints of it there, but not tons of it. A lot of that blue stayed with the green down bottom. And then we get that magenta tone up top. It does make me feel that this line might show a little bit of resistance to us. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it handles itself very well. That does spread from about being an extra fine to about a medium. It does get slightly bits of blurry spots, but not to the point where I feel like I'm losing what I may have written in a note-taking situation, making me afraid to use it. So I would probably be willing to use this because it seems to perform pretty well. Water is lifting all of the magenta tones out, but leaving some of those blues that we saw in the chromatography and not so much the greens that we saw in the chromatography. It's really quite interesting. Pen flesh did everything that water did and not a whole lot more. The paper, I scrubbed this one just a little bit because I was surprised that this was being so resistant with what was there. I'm not seeing the green, I'm seeing the blue. But pen flesh doesn't seem to be completely removing it from the paper. Now, 1/3 bleach solution did completely remove it from the paper without a problem, with only 30 seconds. That's a 1/3 bleach solution. Now, if you have to use a 1/3 bleach solution, what you need to do is make sure that you immediately flush that pen out with water to make sure you don't rust any of your metal parts. I test ink viscosity or flow by using a tilt test, and I'll link that somewhere here. And for the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Put the data onto a bell curve or standard deviation for it to be easily understood. Birmingham Pen Company's Waterford Dusk has a viscosity of 1.48, making this a very wet ink. So if you want darker tones, a wetter pen, you're going to get a very dark purple with this that is almost like not purple. I don't know. But if you use it in a much drier pen, then you can maintain some of that purpleness. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those. Now, for the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Birmingham Pen Company's Waterford Dusk has an average dry time of 15 seconds, making it normal, despite how wet that ink was. Instead of finding inks that look like Birmingham Pen Company's Waterford Dusk, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I wanted a nice green, and I chose Colorverse Sea of Tranquility because I felt that the undertones of green in the chromatography meant using a nice green was really going to make these blend well together. They were going to cooperate nicely. The second writing sample is done on Apica, Franklin-Christoph, and tracing paper. Here we have Apica paper, which is one of my favorite papers. It is so nice to use. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shading. The extra fine is a slightly different tone than I got with the 1.1. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 7 seconds to dry. The medium is a significantly darker tone. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. It took 12 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both shows no color variation. We don't really get any color variation. The nicest thing that I'm seeing going on with this ink as far as any of its tones are, with the extra fine and the stubs, it's often a pleasant tone, but if it's too wet and it goes down too much, it really is just blah for me. Here we have Franklin-Christoph paper. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade. The extra fine is the same tone as the 1.1. It has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The medium is significantly darker than the extra fine or the 1.1, again with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We don't expect it and we don't get it. But again, we see nice variation depending on your nib and flow, not shading in the writing. Now I'm going to put a piece of paper underneath this. This is tracing paper. So the bleeding and the bleeding and ghosting don't really matter because you're not using both sides. I use this because it really, when I was playing with papers to find something that looks really good with this ink, I decided to go to this. Because of what I get with the 1.1. The tone in the 1.1 is very nice. It's got its purpliness here. It loses it in so many places, and I don't even think that's a word, but its purpleness is gone. Except here. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade, but the tone is fantastic. The extra fine has the same tone as the 1.1 with no feather spread, halo, sheen, or shade, 9 seconds to dry. If I could get this tone on any other paper, I would be very happy. Obviously not a great note-taking paper, but it does mean that the tone is there. We just have to find the right paper for it. Medium is significantly darker, no feather spread, halo sheen, no purpliness, 14 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us no color variation. We didn't expect it, we didn't get it, and that's what I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Birmingham Pen Company's Waterford Dusk? For me, this is a dull, uninteresting purple that it just doesn't do it. It's dusty, it's too dark, and it falls into that range of purples that I just don't care for. Not that it's bad for me. As far as what pen is going to get you the best writing experience, I think a fine, dry pen will stop it from being so dark so that you can actually enjoy the purple that this ink is capable of putting down on the page. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching.